Hey, today I want to chat with you about my 3 favorite ways to invest in real estate. Guys, I love investing in real estate. If you've ever talked to me, you know I kind of get passionate about this, and occasionally my passion bleeds through and I speak a little too quickly. So I'm gonna do my best to slow down and speak clearly while I'm talking through this one. So let's chat first about my favorite strategy, the first strategy here, right? Now, it's a version of what we call house hacking. But before I want to get into that, I want to tell you about, or teach you about a great opportunity with the way the tax code is written, right? So the great tax guys that wrote all the laws and wrote the tax rules really wrote it in a way to encourage real estate investing and home ownership, right? So one of my favorite tax rules is the primary residence exemption, right? So what does that mean? We've used this multiple times, and it allows you to get tax-free money on your primary residence, and I'll explain that here, what that means. Here's how that exemption works. If you live in your home for 2 consecutive years out of the last 5, when you sell that home, any money you make on it is tax-free, up to $250,000 for a single person, or $500,000 for married couples filing jointly. So let's say you bought a house for $500,000, or maybe you bought a house and rehabbed it, now it's worth $500,000, and you live in it, and you lived in it for 2 years, and now you go to sell it 2 years down the road, and now it's worth 7 because you bought it right and you upgraded it and do all those right things at the beginning, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But let's say you bought it you're into it for $500,000, and you're turning around and you're selling it for $700,000 in 2 years, and one day after you bought it, that $200,000 you made on that property is now tax-free. Spend that money on whatever you want. You want to go on a vacation? Go on a vacation. You want to buy a rental property? Buy investment property? Buy investment property. You want to stick it in the stock market? Stick it in the stock market. You want to take it out back, turn it into cash and burn it? You can do that too. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can do whatever you want with that money. My 2 favorite ways to apply that strategy are either a fix and flip that we live in, so fix and flip and then live in for a couple of years, or build and live in for a couple of years, new construction. So the fix and flip is probably what most people are more accustomed to and more easier to do. So if you find that house that's run down and messed up and needs a lot of love, right? You can buy it cheaper, rehab the house. Let's say you buy it for $300,000. Let's say it needs $100,000 to put into it. Now you're into it for $400,000. You live in it a couple years. You get to enjoy a beautiful home, freshly remodeled home, great place for your family, right? And in 2 years, you turn around and sell that home for $600,000. You just made $200,000 tax-free on your side hustle. Let's think about that for a second. What is so important about it being tax-free? Well, what's your tax rate? If you're gonna make $200,000 extra this year, right, or $100,000 extra the next 2 years each, you probably have to make $130,000 or $140,000, take out taxes to be left with $100,000. So $100,000 or $200,000 tax-free is the same thing as $250,000, $270,000 on your regular job. Guys, so the money goes a lot further because it's tax-free. And that's one of the reasons I love this version of real estate investing. The other way you can do it is new construction. You can build a house, and if you build it wisely, partner with a good builder or build it yourself, however you want to do it, you can live in a brand new house for a couple of years and sell it in 2 years. Now the money you make on that is tax-free. Now guys, here's where it gets cool. What if you did this 5 times and you made $100,000 each time, or even $150,000 each time? That would mean in 10 years, you live in a $500,000 to $800,000 house, tax-free and paid for. How many of you guys would like to have your house paid for in 10 years without you having to throw extra money every month of the mortgage? Next, I want to chat with you about our second favorite strategy. And this is one we've used multiple times to grab more rental property. If you're gonna go buy an investment property, it's gonna take you 20% down to go buy a rental property minimum. How do you get around it, right? How do you get around it? We employed this strategy when we were early on building our rental portfolio that helped us gain more rental properties faster with less cash. And I love this strategy for the early investor or beginning investor that's just getting started with rental property. Maybe they don't have a ton of cash yet, maybe they're pretty young, or maybe they're even older, but just really getting intentional now with their finances and their real estate investing. This next one is a different version of house hacking, right? So what do? Now there's two main types of financing, right? There's the owner-occupant type of financing. There's also the investor type of financing. Now, if you're an investor, you're financing a property, the bank was gonna want you to put down at least 20% on that property, right? Which is a lot of cash for a lot of people. Just hard to save up, and you can't buy very many very fast with that, right? The other type of financing is an owner-occupant type of financing. And I don't know if you know this or not, but there are lots of low down payment options. You know, for example, if you're military, there's a VA loans, which are 0% down. If you're a first-time home buyer, or you don't have any other type of FHA loan, you can get an FHA loan at 3.5% down, right? We could even do conventionals at 5% down and 3% down, right? Normally we do a 5% down, conventional. We do that all the time for people. So if you're going to live in the home, you can get into the home for much less cash than if you're going to buy it as an investment property. Strategy one was to go get a lot of cash and create capital, right? Strategy two does the other side of that, helping us build long-term cash flow. Here's how it works. When I'm gonna go look for a new house to buy, to move into and live. Now, because I'm doing an owner-occupant financing loan, I only have to put down, 3%, 5% down, and much less than that, 20% down. The key here is I've gotta make it a house that's going to be a great rental when I move out. So when you do an owner-occupant loan, the key for an owner-occupant is you have to intend and live there for at least a year in most cases. So always check with your loan officer to make sure that's accurate. But if you intend and live there for at least a year, you're okay to do an owner-occupant loan on that property. So 5% down on a $150,000 house, right, is $7,500. Whereas 20% down on a $150,000 house is a lot more than that. It's $30,000. Would you rather put down $30,000 or $7,500? Right? How many houses can you buy faster putting less money down? If you put your 5% down on that first house, you're into it, you bought it for $150,000. In a year from now, you saved up another $7,500, maybe $8,000 to buy your next house. So you move out of your first home into the second home you've bought, right? And you're gonna do the same thing. You wanna turn it into that investment property when you're done. When you move out, you don't have to change the original loan at all on the first one. That's locked in for your 10, 15, 30-year fixed loan. And so you don't have to come up with that extra 15% to turn that into an investment loan because you already fulfilled your requirement for an owner-occupant loan by living there for a year. Then you go buy the next one. If you do this for 5 years, all of a sudden you've got 5 rental properties and the tenants are paying down your mortgages for you. And you bought 5 properties without having to save up the full 20% down. Okay, now I wanna share with you my favorite tactic that we use for investing in real estate, but it's a little harder to find. Years ago, we could find these deals a little bit easier. Now it's harder and harder to find. They're harder to do, but occasionally we do find them. And I did one, 6 months ago, and now I'm working on another one currently. So they don't come off around very often, but when they do, jump all over these every chance you get. And this one is called our BRRRR method. What does that stand for? So it's BRRR, right? So if we think about investing in real estate, what holds most people up? It's typically coming up with enough cash to buy the next property, right? And so this is why I love this scenario or this strategy. Now, in order to do the strategy, you have to have some other assets already, which is why I like strategy number 1 and 2 first, to build that base of assets, right? Once you have enough assets to to go invest in real estate. It really makes the strategy viable, right? So if you're just a beginner, this is not a beginner tactic. You definitely need to have some experience, a track record, and some cash on hand to do this. But this strategy does allow us to recycle that cash over and over and over again, so you don't have to continually save up for the next down payment over and over and over again. So this method is called the BRRRR method, or buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Well, let's unpack that a little bit, pun intended. The first one is buy, and this is probably the most important part. We have to buy a property right, meaning we have to get it at a significant discount or buy it in such a condition that the market would not pay more money for the property because of its current condition, where it's pretty tore up or pretty run down, right? The same property might also meet the criteria for a flip, but I wanna show you why I like this method better than flipping. I find a property that's is in deep need of a rehab and is really tore up. I buy it for $100,000 because it needs a lot of renovation and rehab. And so let's say I rehab it, I get it renovated, make it top of the line, make it beautiful, right? And it cost me, let's say $50,000 to do that. So I bought the property for $100,000. I put $50,000 into it. So my cash in or financed in money into the property is $150,000. But because I rehabbed it and made the property a lot nicer, it's now worth much more, maybe $190,000, $200,000 in the open market. So I've got two options. I can either flip it and take my $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, or I could go with my BRRRR method. Well, let's go down that flip for a second and talk about the pros and cons of that. If you flip it, you can get some quick cash. But let's say it's worth $200,000 and you enter it for $150,000, so you think you're gonna make $50,000. Well, let's unpack that $50,000 a little bit. You're gonna pay some commissions on that, okay? So there goes at least 3, probably 6% right off the top, right? So 6% of $200,000 is 12 grand, right? They're gonna pay closing costs again, right? So there's another $1,000 or two, okay? So now you're at $14,000. And let's say you're probably gonna have to negotiate or do some repairs with the buyer. Now you're down to $16,000, right? So instead of making 50, now I'm only making 34. So great, I made $34,000. I've got it in my pocket, it's sold and closed. Now I've got to pay tax on that $34,000, right? 25% tax or whatever your tax bracket you're in, right? Now I'm down a lot less, $25,000, $30,000. So that $50,000 profit I thought I had is really only $25,000 if you're flipping it. Now, if you put a tenant in that property and now you've got it rented and the tenant is bringing in cash every month, now I can go refinance that property. Maybe I bought it on a construction loan to begin with. Now I'm gonna refinance it and turn it into a 30-year, 15-year, whatever type of fixed loan I wanna do. And I can, now because it's worth $200,000, I can get my entire $150,000 back, which includes my down payment on that original loan. So now I've got a property that's worth $200,000. I've got $50,000 in equity in it. It's cash flowing hundreds of dollars every month, and I got my down payment back, so I can do it all over again. Guys, that's one of my favorite methods to do, but those deals are very hard to come by and definitely take a savvy investor. Okay, so let's hit those all three one more time. My first one is version of house hacking, right? Where we can live in it, take advantage of that tax-free money, right? A way to build cash. The second one, a different version of house hacking. This one, the goal is to build cash flow, right? And then the third one is that BRRRR method, that BRRRR method, to help you turn your cash quickly to accumulate those properties. Guys, because what do we really want? Most of us invest in real estate for freedom and flexibility, and that's what real estate can allow us to do. The first tactic helps us build enough of an asset base to allow us to do number 2 and 3, right? Number 2 and 3 allow us to generate enough cash flow to give us the freedom to retire early. And guys, I don't know about you, but I say retire early and that gives me goosebumps. right? So it gives you the freedom to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, and help who you want to help. Guys, I'm Zach Sykes at Homestead & Co., and thanks for watching. I hope you're happy where you are, but if you're not, let's connect. Reach out to me at Zach, Z-A-C-H, at homesteadrealtyco.com. Again, that's Zach, Z-A-C-H, at homesteadrealtyco.com. So you don't have to go back to the bank now that it's an investment property and convert it to an investment loan. And I just threw a pen, and that's just really weird.